All right, everyone, we're here with Chip Kahn, CEO and founder of Boomtown. Chip is a serial entrepreneur, and now he's working on a project to help companies and their customer success. It's a customer experience management software. We'll get into it in a little bit, but Chip, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you joining us. We had a little bit of trouble getting on the show because we're both in moving stages, but I'm glad we were finally able to do it. So let's jump right on in. First question is, what were you doing before you started Boomtown?
Well, first of all, thanks, Julian, for having me, and love your podcast. As a serial entrepreneur, it's been sort of one company after the other, and so before starting this company, it was previous companies.
Yeah.
But I did take a year and a half off, sort of thinking about the problem, and after the last company to figure out sort of what was next, what was the big issue, was there a solution to it, and talking to interviewing prospective customers, but all of that only gives you sort of 2%. It's kind of like the top of the iceberg, right? Until you go do it, you don't really know what you need to do.
Yeah. What and just it's always interesting when people talk about interviewing customers and to get a better insight on that. What are the types of questions you ask customers? Because I think we can all think of like basic questions we ask, but is there anything in particular that you think is insightful enough as a founder to ask to really get to the root of if your problem is going to solve what you're looking to solve?
No, it's good. It's a great question. I think, we knew we wanted to be B to B to B. And so there was question, because ultimately we're serving small businesses or the end customers or end users, but we're going through aggregators that are delivering services to them. So there was questions that we had to sort of figure out the value proposition between both of those groups. And so with the end customer, small businesses, I went out and bought several $1,000s worth of $25 gift cards.
Yeah.
And would go sit down, and my co-founder would go sit down, and we'd ask them questions and ask what was challenging with their tech stacks, and what they wish was better and what the challenges were, and then gave them a gift card. And so for their time. So that's how we solved the end customer. I think our questions at that time were probably more specific than useful to the audience, because everybody's business is obviously different. And then to our customer, so the B2B, the first B2B part, we were fortunate to have relationships and the founding team with a lot of the companies that we wanted to work with. So, we really just validated. But again, all of that is so high level that it sort of proves the thesis, but it doesn't illuminate the functionality you need to build.
Yeah. And just to give us a little quick description of Boomtown and kind of its goal and purpose, can you just give me a short phrase on what its goal is, what's the technology about, just so we can kind of understand more about what the problem is that you're solving.
Absolutely. So we're a customer experience management, or CXM company, and really what we're focused on is helping the financial services ecosystem, which is obviously underpins everything, right? Money, and for businesses. And so the challenge is that it's really difficult as a small business, mid-market, even commercial customer to know where you are in a process and have any visibility into it. There's no Instacart experience. It's a pretty opaque black box of, okay, I think I signed up, I filled in this form, what happens now?
Right.
And so we're bringing visibility, collaboration, communication, and using a no-code, low-code platform to actually help them create ideal customer journeys for the buyer, for buying, for activating, onboarding, and then servicing.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with someone recently. I was signing up for this new technology, and it brought me to the sign up phase, and it was a little bit confusing, and it ended up being, I didn't convert, and
That's
so,
right.
and
right.
yeah, and so I guess with that challenge, what would Boomtown help solve? Is it tracking the customer through that journey and knowing exactly where the drop off is, or is it something different?
No, that's right. It's that. But what's interesting in financial services is that there's multiple companies that typically share a common customer, right? So if you are a small business and you want to be able to take electronic payments in your store or online, the bank that you went to sign up for that actually isn't providing that service.
Yeah.
It's a third party.
Right.
And your accounts receivable solutions, your accounts payable solutions are often fintechs. And so it's a very disjointed process in terms of the handoff to the bank and then to who's really acting as a channel for these third-party products, right?
Yeah.
And so you go to your business banker and say, hey, I have this problem. They don't have the answer because it actually is completely siloed in a different organization. And so, yes, we have a data network where we're bringing that information back in front of both the customer, and in this example, the business banker, so they know what's happening with their customers.
Yeah.
Because right now they don't know. They literally are dealing with it out of Outlook, and they get an Excel report like once a month on what's happening with customers. That does not help in real time.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Way too late. What inspired you to make Boomtown? Where in your journey did this light bulb light up?
I am inspired by small business owners. In the case of the U.S., it's they're the backbone of the economy, and these people do it all. And technology can help make their business better, but it actually turns in most cases a headache. And so my previous company was a payment API before there were payment APIs, and sort of saw the growth of cloud point of sale and helped launch many of the early companies in that, like Square. And so, I just saw the challenges there, and I was like, why is this so hard for small businesses to use?
Yeah.
And we basically came to the realization that this customer information was siloed in the cross organizations, and you really needed to break down those barriers and unlock it for to create a seamless experience where it made it really simple and they could get back to doing what they're really great at, which is making pizza or selling botanicals, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah, I was chatting with another guest, and they kind of work on the funding for small businesses because, and one thing that they noted was that how just like there's so many different things on the operation and day-to-day level that a small business has to do and be successful at to then even think long term. And so it sounds like Boomtown is a solution that kind of helps simplify that process and operate and help them operate. That's super cool. What kind of traction are you seeing now that you've been up and running for some time now? And I'm sure you've got some great customers, some great stories. But what kind of traction are you seeing?
We've got a couple hundred customers now, and think of these more as enterprise businesses, large banks. From a financial traction perspective, we're low eight figures of ARR. Our core customer experience management SaaS product has about 600% year-over-year bookings growth. Those who use it want more. Our NDR or net dollar retention is over 140%.
I love that, man. That's awesome. When in terms of like, I guess what's been satisfying the most? Obviously, the growth has been exceptional. The customer acquisition, hearing that your customers want more from a founder's perspective is always just exactly what you want to hear, right? I guess what in particular really gets you excited about what you're doing?
Well, I think it's two things. One is, there's a lot of things, but a couple that immediately came to mind were how we've evolved the product. Based on our customer feedback and ultimately what the end user needs, and being, really, really attentive to that. And I think it's hard, as when you have a vision, you have to bridge it, right? You have to do the things that people want today versus what they don't know that they need, but you have a vision towards, and finding the right allocation of time on your product roadmap between sort of what's needed next month or by the end of the year versus where this really needs to go. And I think we've done a good job of bringing those two things together. And I think at the end, all of this is only based on the quality of the team, right? Like we can't do, one person doesn't do this. And so, really building a team that I love to work with, that's smart and really exceptional is if you do that, then the results happen, right? And so, it sounds, everybody says it sounds trite, but it really is
it's hard.
the key to it all.
Yeah,
and it's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to build a good team, in my experience, because so many different moving components. You don't really know until you bring someone on to work with. But one thing that you said earlier that caught my attention was like when you say different versions of the product and where it's at. How do you define versions of it? Are you in terms of like the customers you're serving, or is it the technology that you're working on, or is it like certain features? How would you describe the version? And then second follow-up question is, how do you make the changes? I know a lot of founders who are very reluctant to make either changes or improvements, or we all hate the word pivot. I think that can be a good or a bad thing. But how do you define versions, and how do you make those different changes and make them effectively?
Yeah, I think you have to have no pride of authorship.
Yeah.
and just and be like, all right, this was, sort of back to where our conversation started. It's a concept, and you have a thesis.
Yeah.
And then you have to go bring it to life. And in the process of bringing it to life, you have to be super open to feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you start seeing that feedback loop be a pattern to it, meaning repetitive across multiple customers,
mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, I thought maybe that was 20% of it, but actually that should be 80% of it.
Wow.
And that to me is not a pivot. That's just an evolution.
Yeah.
And evolute, if you're not evolving, then product market fit is a moment in time. It's going to change every 18, 24 months because competitors are changing, the technology is changing, the market's changing. The needs are changing, so
right.
you're always have to evolve, right? And that's, I agree. I hate the word pivot, and I think it's actually overused.
Yeah,
because it's really just a function of our jobs is to evolve to a place, but that has a solid foundation that you're building on.
Yeah. No, that's definitely that's a great way to describe it. I think the foundation's important, and then the feedback. When you collect feedback, this is more of a selfish question, but what are you using to collect feedback? How are you getting in touch with your customers, and then how are you keeping track of that so you can really understand where the evolution needs to take, in what direction the evolution needs to go?
Well, I think it depends on the stage of the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So early on, it was in our heads.
Yeah.
And then it evolves into repositories. I think in our case, we use product board.
Yeah.
At this stage, our product team does. But one of the reasons I like to go be in sales is because I really like to understand what the customer's problems are, how they're changing, and what we need to do to satiate those. So
right.
the and that's something I write down, and then it's a discussion. In my weekly one-on-one with our head of product around, hey, I think this is where it's going. It's not like, hey, let's stop what we're doing.
Right.
It's, how do we create a waypoint
mm-hmm.
that,
mm-hmm.
what we're doing today fits into what it is that they need, in the future. And
yeah.
and that's just then you start having those conversations, and
mm-hmm.
And so, some of it's really just making sure you're asking the right questions.
Right.
And not doing it, for us, our audience isn't developers or technologists, so it's really we have to act as the bridge to make the technology human
mm-hmm.
and talk
mm-hmm.
about it in really human ways, and then translate that back into functionally what does this mean, and then technically what does it mean?
Right. Yeah. And one thing I think I've struggled with early on is the idea of setting up Waypoint to not distract from the day to day, and making sure it fits within where your product in the direction it's going.
Totally.
Yeah. What's involved in that? In that process, or do you keep a pretty tight loop, and you and your head of product are chatting about it, mapping it out, making sure it fits in, and then kind of distributing the responsibilities out to the rest of the team? Is it less structured than that, more structured than that? What does that look like? Because that's something I think we still struggle with as well, for the company we're running?
Well, yeah, I think everybody does, because what you don't realize as a founder or a CEO, like, I mean, at an earlier stage, right? Sub 50 million in revenue, whatever it is that, you could be postulating and thinking out loud about something, and people think that's what they should go do.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be really careful that, like, you don't talk, you don't have your inner monologue out loud.
Yeah.
And because that leads to a lot of zigzagging, and I think you have to really be disciplined, because you don't appreciate how much what you're saying could actually impact how somebody's doing something. So I think you have to be really disciplined around that. And if you do that, then those are conversations that frankly are more private in nature, with people that understand, hey, we're brainstorming, and this has to dovetail with what we're working on right now.
Got it.
And if it doesn't, then that's probably not a problem that we should be trying to solve. If it's something that extends or augments what it is that we're doing, then that should be something that's in our roadmap. But when we talk about it, that doesn't mean stop doing what you're doing and go do that, right? And so that's why you just have to be careful around your communication around those things, because it can be taken as quite literal in the moment of, hey, let's go do this. No, I'm not saying no. Actually, we need to be thinking about how we do this in a year and a half or 2 years, and make sure that we're on the right course, and that's hence the waypoint. But you got to be really careful not to, otherwise you just drive teams crazy.
Yeah. When do you make that decision on when to work on that? Like, I think that's a big issue. I wouldn't say issue, but that's something when you are not trying to zigzag, when you're trying to stay disciplined. When do you make that decision that, okay, this fits into our roadmap, this is when we should execute it, and we should start working on it at X point? When do you what's involved in that decision to move forward with that new feature or product or something like that?
Well, I mean, fundamentally there's scarcity, right, in terms of resources to get something done. And you should have scarcity. If you don't have scarcity, then you're probably spending too much money and you're probably going to go out of business. Yeah. So feeling like that's something you should be contending with daily. And I think you have to prioritize, and you have to prioritize it based on, we go through with our customers and go, okay, who are we solving for, kind of like on a pro rata basis, and how does that tie to the feedback of what the sales team's selling? And then you kind of weight it. Yeah. And because you can't, as much as we'd all love to treat everybody the same, you can't. Right. And so you have to prioritize. Some features that some companies want that others don't care about. Right. If you think that the opportunity with them is larger, and that the sales pipeline supports that more of the new customers want it, right? And so, it's a process, and it's not something that you shouldn't be doing. We have the conversations frequently. When we do something about it, it's quarterly. Yeah. And so because then it's like raising it to the level of going, it's like when you've heard a word you haven't heard before, and all of a sudden you hear that word, or like this restaurant you never heard of, and all of a sudden you start hearing about the restaurant. Like if you put it out there, then all of a sudden the antennas go up, like, oh, I heard that too, I heard that too, and then you're able to collectively as a team, be more aware of that as being something, because it can be said in a whole bunch of different ways. Yeah.
One founder described to me as different cues. Like you set your intention out there, you kind of like manifest it, and then you start seeing those cues to make you make the decision. And at some point, it just becomes so obvious that it's like, okay, well now we either have to work on this, or make that decision. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well put. Yeah. What's the biggest risk that you're that Boomtown's facing today?
Well, the market segment we're focused on is the financial services ecosystem, and those are long sales cycles. They're enterprise sales. These can be 9 to 18 month very consultative conversations and journey mapping, literally where we're on site and look at, how does the customer experience this versus how your internal systems and your internal operations teams, deal with it. And so, that and it's not an industry has traditionally been, it's changing a lot with fintech,
Right.
but it's not an industry that's traditionally been sort of cutting edge or willing to take risks.
Right. Yeah.
You get promoted not taking risks.
Yeah.
And so that's that, that's our challenge. And the flip side of it, though, is that, once you get into these organizations that are very large, and you prove it and you show the benefits, the business outcomes, and there's a ton of expansion opportunities that happen really quickly because the perception of the risk is very mitigated, right? So you can start to add more lines of business, quickly. So it's really that upfront land, and then the expands can start to happen pretty quickly, and that offsets the lengthy sales cycle. Anyway, that's how we address it.
Yeah. So it sounds like typically it's just timing right now, making sure that these deals actually come to fruition. And so, is there any risk with the technology you're facing, or is that you feel fairly strong about that? And just at this point, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's adjusting to the customer needs along that cycle until the final decision's made to work together.
Yeah. I mean, we're not a deep tech company. It's not. I don't think our risk. I mean, there's always risk in terms of allocation of how much you spend on performance, reliability versus functionality, and we have all of the scaling problems that everybody does. But but I mean, it's not like there's some breakthrough tech required to be successful here. It's we're a kind of next generation SaaS company, and yes, there's some things that are new, but it's not flying cars.
Right. Yeah. Sounds like it's similar companies that I've heard. It's like you have that technology that allows you to do what you're doing more effectively and more efficiently, and then part of the other half of the coin is just the helping with the adaptation, making sure that they know how to utilize their technology. Because I think a lot of times companies fail in that part, which is just making, and I think that's kind of like the stickiness behind it. A lot of people use that. It's like, how well can I use the technology that I've been given, and then how I guess important is it to my daily function.
Yeah. Really, the importance to me, what you're describing is customer success from a SaaS perspective. Like, how do you make sure you get them to value quickly, and then continue to extract more value over time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What's the long-term vision for Boomtown?
Well, it's early going as far as the CXM category is concerned. And so, we think every business that has CRM should adopt CXM.
Yeah.
So it's a huge green field. We're very focused on that. I think it's important to focus and have a vertical that that you can win in. And for us, that's the financial services ecosystem.
Yeah.
But when you look at what's happening around that with, embedded finance, which triples it, right? Which is moving, the services that you would have had to, 15 years ago, go into the bank branch, actually move that into the software that you use every day. It's huge. And I think from there's other adjacent industries like health tech, retail brands, and they actually have a greater interdependencies with financial service products than appear at first glance. And so we'll continue to sort of go out in concentric rings from where we are today, where there's heavy actually overlap, particularly with the data network that we are building. But it's ultimately every business that has CRM should have CXM. That's the vision.
I love it, man. That's exciting stuff. Bonus question here that I love to ask all the guests that come on: what books or people have influenced you the most?
So, without pointing to a specific person, I'm going to go back to what I said before. Like, I love going into a restaurant and talking to the owner. And these small business owners, I really am inspired by how much that they take on, and they don't get to be, they're not on podcasts.
Yeah.
And but they are working their tails off.
Right.
And have some great specialty, but then have to do everything else, like
Right.
managing people and schedules and inventory and marketing and sales and like many cases cases, and I just think they're very, very, always have a great story, always impressive.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I kind of every couple of weeks find inspiration, just interacting with people that are business owners that sort of aren't in our tech sphere.
Yeah.
That doing incredible stuff for a long time, making a solid living doing it. I think it's really great.
Yeah. Are you tough to go to dinner with? Are you always trying to ask for the manager or the owner when you're sitting down at the table?
No, I actually, that's funny. No, I will never ask for changes to a menu item. But if you go to the right place, then sometimes they're there and you get to interact with them. If you're doing local business stuff, they're there, and they, who they are. You get the vibes.
Yeah.
So sort of like you can start interacting.
I love it, man.
In a positive way.
Yeah. No, I love making connections with people who are doing stuff actively in life. I think you always learn something new. You always get a deeper appreciation for their journey. You take some type of learning and bring it into your life. No, man, it's amazing stuff. Well, thank you so much for answering the questions and being on the podcast. I'm really excited to share this with everyone else and have everyone kind of learn from Boomtown. But last question is, how do we support Boomtown? How do we find you? Where can we go and support restaurants or business owners and have them adapt your technology?
Well, so we're invisible. We're white labeled. First of all, obviously support local business.
Yeah.
Wherever you live.
Yeah.
And you won't see us, but if you're in financial services or any really company delivering products, and you have partners and your customers are getting hung up, pre-activation churn, or the servicing challenges, we can help. I would say stay tuned. We actually have a pretty big and exciting announcement coming out in mid-September. So follow us on LinkedIn. And stay tuned for that. We're excited about what we're going to be announcing in 3 weeks.
Sweet, man. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Julian. Appreciate it.